Until reading your book, I never realized how many divine creators have been born from virgin women as Mary. You say Buddha, Krishna, Perseu, Horus, Mercury.
Several Aztec gods. I think there's no god that I know of in history. I have a whole paragraph of this.
That had been...
I say history, in mythology, that has not been born of a virgin. It would have been impossible for Christianity to sell itself as a religion if it did not continue this Egyptian, Aztec, Persian, Mongol tradition. Even Buddha is born from a slit in his mother's side. Anything but the birth canal, anything but the vagina. This unclean vessel, God has for some reason used only one-way street.
But was this the eternal fear of sex, or perhaps the need that make an origin for God that would be different from the human biological system?
It's the religious fear of sex, certainly, but it's also the male revulsion from what it most desires. Men need women, and they don't like the fact that they need them. They need them terribly. They hate the fact that they need them. They experience a disgust about this fact. Religion makes that into a system and consecrates it. My first wife was Greek Orthodox, Eastern Christian. When she was having her monthly period, she wasn't allowed to go to the church. Certainly not to take the sacrament of Mass. I think that used to be true at any rate of the Western Orthodox, the Roman Catholic as well. It's certainly true of Judaism. And the revulsion from female menstrual fluids is very common, of course, also in Islam and all other cults. This comes from human anthropology. It does not come from heaven. It does not come from the sky. It doesn't come from the planets. It doesn't come from the sun and the moon and the stars. It comes from the base, very primitive forms of human anthropology. It's the first thing to know about it.
Let's take a look at the three monotheist religions. You have been submerged in the readings of the scriptures of a same story told in three different ways. But it was not very clear for me your own view on the three mostly known men in humanity, Moses, Muhammad, and Jesus. Tell us about them.
Moses is a mythical figure, invented many centuries after he died. There are probably four authors of what is called the Torah, the Jewish Bible, the Pentateuch, the first five books of the New Testament.
Invented.
Biblical scholarship suggests at least four authors, contradicting each other, sometimes synthesizing each other. Nobody except the fanatical Orthodox Jews believes that Moses was the author of the Torah, or that God dictated it to him. He's the author, in other words, at second hand. Muhammad, of whom it's also said that he dictated a book at God's, or the Archangel Gabriel's dictation, is not quite so much a figure in mythical legend. There probably was such a person. It seems quite likely there was such a person, though much of what we know about him is legendary. He's on the borderline. Jesus of Nazareth is much more on the borderline. Earlier, between the two. He's more in the world of William Tell, Robin Hood, King Arthur, the legendary figure. Certainly most of what was written about him and what is claimed is written, as with Muhammad, as with Moses, many hundreds of years afterwards, by people who didn't know him, who were themselves very parti pris, as the French say, very partisan. But the effort that they make to make the story come true suggests that there may have been some sort of human individual involved. In each case, it's the desire to fabricate a story that testifies to the strength of the belief.
How would you draw Jesus in his lifetime? What's your view?
We only have, even at the best, even at the claims of his supporters, written many years later, and very discrepant. None of the accounts agree about his birth, his life, his death, or his supposed resurrection. The four Gospels completely contradict each other on all these things. But let's suppose they're trying to do their best. There are a few years around his birth, childhood. Then there are about something like 25 or nearly 30 missing years. And then there's the return somewhere, somehow, apparently of the same person, to roughly the same area, ending in a very horrible death. Or not ending in a very horrible death. For me, raising the question, a very important question, is it true for Christians to say somebody died for my sins when they did not in fact die? Which do they mean? Somebody, I make it as a morally serious point, if somebody throws himself on top of the bomb that would otherwise explode in the schoolroom, he absorbs the explosion, loses his life to save other people, we can respect it. What if he isn't doing that? What if he's doing that and he's going to get up 2 days later and say, I'm unharmed? Doesn't it diminish the admiration one has for the sacrifice? You see what I mean? Christianity leaves all these moral questions entirely unresolved.
Coming back to the scriptures, you say that the Old Testament was a nightmare, but the new one was still more cruel. What was horrible about it?
The Old Testament I describe as a nightmare because it contains the warrant, the official divine warrant for ethnic cleansing, as we now call it, the destruction of other peoples, actually for genocidal ethnic cleansing, the complete destruction down to the last child of the Midianites, the Amalekites and others. They're to be erased, obliterated, their land taken. If there are any survivors, preferably young female, they should be made into slaves, and so on. It contains the warrant for all this. Slavery, genocide, murder of children, etc. And theft, conquest, dispossession, imperialism, the most arrogant kind. But that's it. Once the Midianites or the Amalekites have been destroyed, or the Moabites have been destroyed, that's it. They don't suffer anymore for not being Jewish or not having the covenant with God. They're gone, but that's it. There's no hell. But now we're going to torture you after you're dead forever. Right. That completely evil idea only comes with Jesus of Nazareth, who says for the first time, if you don't agree with my lovely offer, depart from me and go into eternal fire. The most evil idea I think that's ever been proposed in history. Now very much preached by the suicide murderers of Islam as a central teaching of their wicked doctrine.